Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I am Aurora.
And I'm everyone's favorite video game transvestite, Kaia.
And this week we are discussing Series 9, Episode 10, Face the Raven by Sarah Dollard. This would technically be Clara's farewell episode if Hellbent didn't happen. And it does that fairly well, I think. Like, initially, I'm gonna be real. Initially, like, I thought I was going to come in here and complain about how kind of stupid and out of nowhere the final twist is, but it feels like, upon thinking about it, it feels like it's that way on purpose.
Yeah, this, I do like the, basically, I forget exactly what trope it's called, but it's a variation on the, like, oh, it's just another, like, day in the office, except this one crucial thing that goes wrong, that if Clara hadn't done, it would just be another episode.
Yeah, actually, to make a comparison to make another comparison to 10 and Rose, actually, it does actually kind of feel like Doomsday, where it starts off as a normal fucking episode and then everything goes super pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just such an interesting episode because, like, the ultimate, like, oh, we fucked up thing comes in a very innocuous moment toward, like, the sort of, to use, Greek tragedy terminology, the moment of reversal happens at, like, in the middle, and the moment of recognition comes way later. So the moment where Clara fucks herself is in the middle, and then just, like, it's right at the end when it's just like, this innocuous moment just became what made this episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's, I will say, though, I know that it's not what they focus on and that they do something different for Heaven Sent and Hellbent, and I don't mind them doing that. However, I kind of would have liked... I wish there was 2 episodes to this, because it feels like it introduces an interesting setting to play in and then doesn't have the time to play in it because it's 45 minutes and it needs to move on to the next thing, so we have time for all the juicy bits near the end.
Yeah.
Just another thing that Sleep No More took from us. The time slot to give this
well, I mean, also just in general, they cut down the run order by 1 episode because, like, during RTD and I think even the Matt Smith era, they were 13 episode seasons and they got cut down to 12 plus a Christmas special. So I would have liked to have a 13th episode that just made it two like linked 2-parters in a row.
Yeah.
Because, it legitimately feels like after they've spent the time searching for the trap street and they've found the trap street and, okay, there's the mystery, okay, and we'll ask around a couple people, and then by that point, it's like, oh, no, wait, we need to wrap this up. Okay, let's get moving.
Yeah, I there definitely is, like, a whole middle in here that could have been here. I don't think the episode, like, suffers necessarily by not having it. I feel like the pacing is still good, but I definitely can see the potential that this could have been a good 2-parter.
As it stands, it's more of like a character / like stealth event episode where there could be, like, there's some stuff about, like, I guess you could draw, like, refugee or, like, underserved communities, like, parallels, and it's barely there.
Yeah, in fact, if it wanted to do that, it would have spent more time on it.
Yeah, I've heard people compare, like, what this is to, like, Diagon Alley from Harry Potter, which, aside from being cringe, aside from being cringe for like that reason, it's just, like, 2 completely different things. But yeah, it's just in this episode, the plot and devices the setting is used to be a vehicle for the characters as opposed to like the characters or the setting being a vehicle for themes.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting. It's really interesting to have, and this is the core kind of. I think this is one of the other ways that this does the Ten and Rose thing better, because in the end, Rose basically is lost through an act of God, a Diabolus ex machina. And because she is too good for this sinful earth, it's not her fault, and she eventually gets her happy ending. But here, no, Clara just fucks up, and he literally, I love the line that he says where he's like, no, we're not different, I'm just sturdier than you are.
Yeah, I mean, just all of the last exchange is so good, and just, I really, like, this is the like, companion departure that I feel like had the most setup, and, like, the most consistent setup. Because, you know, like, Amy's was obviously set up and foreshadowed, but it was done all out of order. We covered that all. And then the other ones, they just sort of, like, I guess, like, Martha's is, like, pretty well established, and, like...
Yeah.
But the others just sort of, like, you get to a certain point, and they're like, all right, well, that companion's done, bye. And they just sort of, like, write an ending. Which, and, you know, those endings are... I mean, Rose's isn't great. Donna's is heart-wrenching.
Martha's is good. Bill's is also good, IMO.
But I think Clara's is the one where it really feels like her departure is coming out of a very consistently written arc, and one that is flowing into this episode with that momentum to it.
Mm-hmm. Even if it was extended by an entire season.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is, like, I feel like this is a much better place for Clara to depart than it was last season. And that's why I really enjoy this, is that I feel like it really is, because you get so much in this season that's really leading towards that. And I think the interesting thing with this season is you have a very clear, like, counter, like, me almost acts like a foil to Clara in this, because she's like, she gets the bullshit ending that she gets to live forever. And it's her that eventually screws over Clara, and in a way their fates are sort of like thematically tied, but opposite, and they've been screwed over by the Doctor in different ways. And yeah, I think just the ending with Clara here is so interesting, because it really is just like her trying too hard to be like the Doctor. And I think that's why it's really important that this episode has Rigsby in it, because, you know, Flatline was the first episode of hers where she was really trying to be the Doctor. And I think it's really important that they brought him back for this one, where that's what ultimately gets her killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would liken this to like Clara's Series 8 departure, her theoretical departure. That's like Toy Story 3. Like, okay, great ending, like, makes sense. Let's pack it up and go home. This is Toy Story 4, where it's like, okay, I don't know why, but, like, great. Like, even better, fantastic. From memory,
I think it's a case of if Clara's season 8 ending happened, this season would have, as a result, have been entirely different. And I think you could have done something interesting with it. I think both are equally valid, and I guess the depressed, miserable piece of shit part of me kind of likes the idea of going even further on, instead of it being a fuck up of she tries to act too much like the Doctor, it being they just push each other away naturally.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm bringing with this is that I think her ending is too similar to Rose's, in that there's like they did a great job, like, hubris and wanting to be with the Doctor, and you know, thinking she could be too much like him, like, led her to making the wrong choices, and now they can't travel anymore. With Rose, initially it was separation. With her, it's death. And then, in my opinion, both arcs go a step beyond that, and just, it's there where it loses me. From memory, I haven't rewatched Hellbent. Maybe I will have a different attitude, but from memory, it's just like, okay, this is so great, but some of the power of it is taken away from, like, well, I know that in 2 episodes that we're gonna, you know, take a different angle, and it's not necessarily, like, bad, it's just, like, too much, you know?
Yeah, and obviously we will have stuff to say about that when we get to next week. Now, that being said, I don't know exactly what I'm going to have to say next week because I have not seen Hellbent since, like, I don't know, 2015, but definitely like 2018. It's been several years. So, I don't know what I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, we haven't watched it in ages either.
Didn't you do a rewatch with your sibling recently?
We did not get up to that point. We dropped off before the end of Series 8.
Oh, valid.
Anyways,
so,
I this episode is cool.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I think the setup is really good. I think it's a really clean lead-in. I don't know. I feel like it's just a good little lead-in. Like, I wish they would do this more. Like, okay, I know they've done it a few times, but like, character, like you know, supporting character from a past episode who was pretty good. Bring them back. They have some new problem. Help them. The only other case I can think of that is what's his face from The Lodger, and he's not actually good. So.
Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah, Craig. And I wish they would do that more. I wish they would do that more.
I feel like Welf is kind of like that, to a certain degree.
I mean, but he's like directly connected to the companion, so I companion families tend to show up a couple times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. It's a good, especially thematically with Clara. It's like one of the few like very, very, very smart things that's like subtle about this episode.
Yeah. And I think
I really do wish they would do that more.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I actually do, I think an additional episode would also, I think, really add to this, is I think it would have been much more interesting because, so we've already had an episode where a Shielder is placed against the Doctor, right? And in that case, it's because of her apathy and wanting to move on. But I feel like you could make a really, if you could explore here how in this case she ends up opposed to the Doctor through, instead of apathy, caring very much about a specific group to the point that she's willing to seriously fuck over someone else. And admittedly, even she didn't intend to fuck over someone as hard as she did. But even then, you know, she's basically imprisoning the Doctor. That's the deal, the trade-off that she made. Someone who she owes multiple times over.
I do think this is probably my favorite episode that, like, my favorite portrayal of this character that Maisie Williams does.
Yeah.
Not that there's some like dark shit that's sort of explored in her second episode, but like this, I don't know, it felt like a real evolution, whereas in the two-parter where we meet her, it's like, here's one version of the character, and here's something like almost completely different, and yet in this episode we still see that character, but like altered by like the centuries. And I think, again, Geoff, as you explained, there's that juxtaposition of apathy to I guess sort of like devoted, I don't know if activism is the right word, but like just the like apathy versus investment. That's
how would
really
we describe the governmental structure of the Trap Street?
Anarcho-NATOist? I don't know.
I mean, I would just describe it as really authoritarian. I mean, it's just like a death penalty state.
Yeah.
No, it's that planet from that one TNG episode where everything is a death penalty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's randomized. What the God, that episode is so stupid. Tune in next
Yeah.
year. But
Maybe.
maybe.
Brain. Yeah, no, it's like it honestly like I think it would be interesting if they actually leaned into it more and yeah, cuz it's like it feels like I understand why she's not like as fully opposed like it placed in opposition to the Doctor, like why she's still like not full antagonist of Woman Who Lived, but I think it would be interesting if she's like if she was able to take even more of an antagonistic role here, because it would also kind of make it twofold of like Clara fucks herself over by accepting the thing to basically try and play doctor and save Rigsy. And the Doctor fucked himself over by, without consent, giving immortality to this person.
Yeah, and I think the sort of central idea in this episode is that the doc Clara fucks herself over, but she fucks herself over because the Doctor's been enabling her.
Yes.
And you sort of, that's sort of the point near the beginning of the episode where Clara's like hanging out of the TARDIS and like flailing around, like happily enjoying herself, and the Doctor like doesn't say anything.
You have parallels today, the Doctor, when he's hanging out of the TARDIS over London. She's literally being the Doctor.
Yeah, and even more than that, I feel like there's been a couple scenes where companions like hang out of the TARDIS and they're usually like terrified and screaming.
Yeah.
I might be just like making that up.
Yeah, no, that does happen a couple times.
Yeah, and so usually, that's a very intentional scene. Like, she has lost her sense of danger because she thinks she's the Doctor and she's invincible. Mm-hmm. Because she keeps getting out of these scrapes. And we see that a lot throughout the season in her dialogue, where she just keeps saying like, "Oh yeah, no, it'll be fine. I can take these risks. I can keep going."
Yeah.
And I think it's not subtle. Like, that part isn't subtle. I would say what is subtle is the fact that, she's doing it because she's lost Danny and this is basically all she has left.
Yeah.
And she knows she's going to do this until she dies. And what I really love about that fact is it doesn't become clear until right at the end there when she name drops him. Yeah. And I think that like really recolors your perception of her this entire season as like not someone who's like gotten over it and is just like cheerfully going around with the Doctor, but as someone who like really doesn't have anything else and is just being risky because that's what somebody who's like lost everything and is passively suicidal does.
Yeah, and it recontextualized why I will admit, like as I said, I like the Series 8 ending, but it also recontextualizes and gives a even better reason for why she comes back than just the simple because they do love each other in a sort of Arrow Ace form. It's also because she's falling back on him because the more stable, positive influence in her life is fucking dead.
Also, fuck that kid that Danny brought
fuck
back.
That kid.
She doesn't want anything to do with it.
Fuck that kid.
Michael, the fucking Michael Jordan fuck them kids image.
But I think you bring up a good point, or someone did, that in a situation where like clearly Clara screws herself by trying to be the Doctor and she's not the Doctor, and in another way Lady Me is also screwing a lot of people by kind of trying to be the Doctor or trying to be what her image of him is, and it would be very easy to sort of like textually imply or even state that like, oh, the message of this story is that only the Doctor can be the Doctor because he's, there's just something.
But even the Doctor
him.
can't do that because his fuck up is the reason why we're all here in the first place.
Exactly. So it's important that Lady Me is here. It's important that we have the context of who Clara is, because without some of that important context and that previous, built storytelling, it can often come out that like the Doctor is just sort of like I don't know, kind of what the Master
Yeah.
LARPs as like Time Lords are like the quote unquote like fascist Ubermensch, just like the stronger man that needs to lead. But he's not that. And the only moment in this episode where he gets like that, at the very end, where he's just like, I will screw your whole operation. I will bring the Daleks here. I will bring the Cybermen here. Like, when he becomes
the Time Lord victorious again.
when we see that like sliver of like what a Time Lord is, is when like we see like, oh shit, like this is not a good place to be. That even the Doctor fails sometimes at being quote unquote like the good guy or the correct Doctor. And again, it's not to bring up Chibnall, but while watching this episode, I was starkly reminded of like an episode I actually like, Villa Diodati, where the Doctor is just like, we're not a team. This is a plateau, or this is a mountain, and I'm the plateau, and I'm standing here alone. The actually
one time they tried and did anything
correct.
good with
and sure,
13.
Yeah, and again, we can get into how that is sort of an interesting character moment, sort of isn't, but it's a nice contrast to be like, to show that like, no, that attitude is part of the problem. It's when you think like, oh, I'm invincible, or oh, like, I'm the only one who truly sees what's going on, and I have to exert my will over like everything, because I'm the only one who like really knows. So again, that's just one of the more subtler layers to this whole situation, which is, you know, despite how lukewarm I kind of am on Lady Me as a whole, especially with how we'll see her in Hellbent, I do think her inclusion here is practically necessary to make this episode as powerful and as remembered.
Because I was kind of mulling, earlier, I was kind of mulling it over in the shower, like kind of like whether or not I put this, whether or not I rank Series 8 or Series 9 higher. Because I think if you go by a story-by-story basis, Series 8 is more consistently good. But Series 9 definitely has more bangers, and I think stuff like this, where it is able to sort of cohesively tie everything together, really is why it kind of makes it. Even though I fucking hate Sleep No More. I wasn't very fond of the Zygon 2-parter aside from the speech, and I thought the last go-around on the Ashildr stuff was kind of meh. I think overall, the narrative that it weaves through it is good enough to kind of stand above it all. And it does cause, like, most complaints that I have about this, aside from like minute syndrome stuff, are just fairly like nitpicks, like the fact that like the Doctor and Rigsy and Clara are like, wait, so you just do the death penalty for just that? That's kind of fucked up. And Ashildr goes, no, actually, we do it because of this. And then they just drop it and don't really come back to that again about like the fact that that's kind of fucked up. They just go, yeah, okay, all right, and just move on. Like, I do get that it's like they have a limited time to work with, but like, yeah.
Does the UK have the death penalty?
I would assume so. We'll know when this episode comes out. Emma asks us.
I don't.
True.
I don't think they do anymore. No, Yes, they abolished it.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
There is one okay thing about Britain. Take that, whoever made that album.
Slow Tie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously we haven't fully we still have the finale to come, but just in terms of like the overall structure, I would tend to agree. I think there's in series 8 there's more individually like thematic or like interesting like beats there. But it's clear that even though Capaldi does a fantastic job in 8, it's kind of like uncharted territory for modern Who to have a doctor like this.
Yeah.
And in series 9 it just like feels more comfortable, and if series 8 was like a vehicle for like mostly like competent to like great storytelling, I think this is just like the characters more than anything shine out here, which like neither approach is necessarily wrong, but it does create an interesting contrast, especially how like 12 evolves overall as a character, and Clara too, frankly. So
yeah, I mean, when we watched this was definitely our favorite season of Doctor Who, and I think I would probably still agree. I think just it's really the point where Moffat like finally, everything finally comes together
gets
for
his
Moffat.
shit together.
Yeah, gets his shit together, because he was all over the place for 11, and he was just busy. Things couldn't get it quite right, and then just like 8 was putting it together. He was putting it together finally, but like the pieces were all there, but he couldn't quite tie them together right yet. And I feel like 9 is really the part where he like figured it out and is like, this is what I want to be doing with Doctor Who, and he goes out and does it. It's really good.
Hybrid bullshit aside,
And all it took was for him to make one of the worst fucking episodes of television ever with that goddamn Sherlock finale.
hey, look.
Anyways, what were you saying?
No, is it's weird how, I don't know, I think it's a testament to the quality of this series that like we're like, oh yeah, like so much of this is so good, but fuck that hybrid stuff. Like,
Yeah.
which kind of we kind of have to stop doing, because if I remember correctly, the finale is kind of like has that front and center. But aside from that, this has been one of the least, like, mystery box, like, bullshit. Like, it's been there, and it's been annoying, and sometimes it's even been cringe. But, like, the quality and just, like, general interest of the characters is just, like, it's kind of compensated for that so much. I don't know. At least that's how it feels like to me. I do think Series 10 kind of perfects.
Yeah, because he opens the
Moffat
mystery box
series
halfway through and then just fucking drops it. Because he's like, yeah, all right, cool, we'll just leave this.
Exactly, and then Chibnall is
Ooh, mystery boxes,
era.
wee!
Yeah, basically. So yeah,
Whimsical.
Trolls
Whimsical.
twirls the mustache that he doesn't even have.
Chibnall is the type of guy to air twirl a mustache.
Chibnall the type of guy to sleep like me.
He's a 10, but wrote Sleep No More. Or, Timeless Child.
Yeah.
Both suck. Sue me. God, we really got off the track there. But no, it's a good... This would almost work as a finale. I think in, like, any other thing, this would be, like, a finale. And I wouldn't exactly equate it to, like, Utopia. But it kind of does have that feeling where, like, at the end, it's, like, this cliffhanger. And you could totally see, like, tune in next season.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like when Doctor Who does that. It tends to lead to, like, very lopsided series finales, unfortunately. But, you know, we know the banger we're in for next time.
Yeah, I will say, just based off of what's set up here, what's based off of what is set up here, I already feel like my opinion on Hellbent will be like, yeah, it's fine, but he should have failed to bring Clara back and had to live with that. Though, I don't know, actually, now that I think about that, I'm actually already arguing that in my mind. So we'll see how I feel about that next week. This is not the place to argue the merits of Hellbent. That's next week's episode.
Yeah.
So, like, is around now the point that we can confess that I don't think we've seen Hellbent since it came out, and I remember really liking it when it came out. So, shrug.
As I said, I have not seen Hellbent since, like, if not when it came out, like, pre-COVID, pre-circling out of camp, like, still high school Geoff. And I remember thinking it was all right. It obviously wasn't as good as Heaven Sent, because pretty much nothing could be. But it was at the very least all right. But I guess we'll find out next week. As a segue for that, I'm ready to move on to ratings if everybody else has said everything.
I think I have, like,
go ahead,
two more
take
thoughts.
The floor.
Yeah, just going back to, like, the idea of the two-parter thing. I think a couple of reasons that would work is, one, because of, like, the like secret daughter thing. I feel like, you know, that doesn't necessarily need a lot more, but I feel like the episode could have benefited from her being, like, an actual character that we had some investment with before that reveal. Yeah. I feel like there's definitely, like, we don't get to explore the setting that much. It's just, like, they come in, they get, like, the interrogation, then they're in, like, another room, and then they just kind of run around for a bit. And I feel like that there could have been a bit more to, like, explore the setting and its implications, and to really see that the piece is being kept or whatever. There's just not that much there, which I don't think hurts the episode per se, but I think it definitely could have been a two-parter. Like, there could be, like, a lot more here. And the other reason I think it could benefit from being a two-parter is, like, I really think that the Clara thing could have benefited from being a delayed, like, a really delayed fuse. Because if you have that, like, in the middle of the second episode, and then that, like, oh, I fucked up, or, like, if you have that moment in the middle of the first episode, sorry, and then that I fucked up moment comes, like, near the end of the second episode, that's a lot more, like, delayed fuse, and I feel like that kind of reveal really benefits from that. Those are my two pieces.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Until then. Oh, well, no, I'm jumping the gun. All right, ratings. All right. Yeah, no, I think I did have some more issues with this earlier on. But I kind of ended up, kind of working them out by the end of this and being like, actually, you know what? Okay, I'm more okay with this. Yeah, I think it's a good, at least as it is right now, it's a good send-off for, Clara. With a lot of good ideas, even if it doesn't, you know, even if I wish it had been a two-parter, it still works pretty well as it is, I think. Yeah. So I'd still say it's like a solid A. It's still really, really good, I think.
Yeah. I enjoyed this episode a lot. Particularly, there's just, like, kind of a switch that happens that's, like, pulled in the last, like, 10 minutes, I would probably say. 5 minutes. That we didn't really talk about in depth, but, like, that's like, the build-up is there. The the goodbye between the two, between Clara and 12, is kind of like prolonged, but it doesn't
it's a
feel
little
like...
bit long. I will say there were a couple lines that had me groan a little on it, but overall it was pretty good.
No, yeah, it didn't reach like Return of the King levels of like dragging it out, but like then the actual like death scene comes, and
they hold on that a little bit too long. They cut back and forth like a lot.
Yeah, they linger on the screaming that we can't hear a bit too much, but I do think the choice of pulling out the sound for the scream, and just focusing on that, I think aside from how much it lingers, it's like pretty damn impactful, and seeing how, especially how like 12 reacts to it and what he tells me at the very end is just fucking bone chilling. So that's great. And I think sadly the rest of the episode, in its effort to like get there, has sort of, due to the 45-minute syndrome, I don't know, there are certain things that feel like cut corners in the storytelling, but you know, if they set out to do a mostly like character-focused piece and just decided not to touch too much on the themes of this like hidden street and refugees and, you know, hiding people, like whatever, that's their choice, I guess. But in the end, I don't know, I appreciate the themes and like the parallels between me and 12 and Clara, and it leads into probably the best episode of the entire series. Sets that up real well. I'm gonna call this a very, very, very strong 8 to a light 9 of an episode.
Yeah, I mean, we really do like this episode. I think it's just it's so powerful in a particular way of just like this real finality. And I know that's kind of undone by Hellbent, but not actually, which is why I'm still satisfied with this. Because it feels like such a good send off, and I really like what they do with Clara in this episode, and just like the pieces they bring into it are not pieces I probably could have ever thought to bring into it, like, you know, Rigby and Lady Me. And I think the episode is just so much better for the fact that those pieces are there and just like enhancing the episode. And it's a really impressive episode. I have some, you know, pretty mild issues with it. Just like, I think it's a little undercooked at some points. I think it drags a little at some near the end. Just like, yeah, but that's really pretty much it. So I would say this is like a 9.25 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. Until then, next time we will be covering Hell Sent Heaven Sent Hellbent. Until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. You can support us on Patreon for a number of benefits, such as early access to episodes, the ability to listen in live to episodes being recorded, and potentially even the ability to guest star upon an episode or an episode of your choosing. I'm Geoff. You can follow me on Twitter at WheatleyDL.
I am a simp for the 12th Doctor Red Velvet
yes!
suit. That shit is S tier. Best 12 look. Actually, there might be one or two in season 10 that rival it, but definitely best 12 look so far. You can follow me for more of my super controversial, mediocre shit posting at Twitter at of Mice and Femmes on the twitter.com. Thank you.
I'm the eminently problematic Genshin Impact Kaeya, and you can follow me at genshincockgirl.twitter.com.
And we will see you all next week.